Hola, buenas a todos.
Hello, hello everybody.
Vamos a retomar una vez más después de
We are going to start a new season of interviews at MesasNEE with a very well-known person.
Invitado y que
We are glad to introduce you Mr. Robert Swartz, founder of TBL, or Thinking-Based Learning Methodology.
Desarrolló en la Universidad de Massachusetts.
He used to be a professor at Massachusetts University, and we have taken advantage that we are here in Madrid attending to his Summer Institute to be trained at TBL techniques. Hello.
Hola. Hola.
Hey.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Quería preguntarte, Robert,
as a first question, I would like you to explain us the basis of TBL, or Thinking-Based Learning.
So you want me to tell you what TBL is? Well, TBL stands for Thinking-Based Learning, and it says what it is. It's learning based on thinking. But that has a lot, behind it, not just a few words. And, TBL is a methodology to try to meet two failings of regular school. And one failing is that in regular school, students they don't learn how to think carefully and well. They learn how to memorize things, some of them, but how to make good, careful decisions, how to make predictions, use critical thinking, how to, use creative thinking to develop wonderful ideas. Schools don't try to teach students those things. And as a result, students get older and older and older, and they practice those kinds of thinking every day, but they don't do a good job of it. And many people who do not good thinking, they make mistakes and they get into trouble. Sometimes they make good decisions, but it's really very chancy. And so that's the first thing, is to help students be better thinkers. But also, the way content is taught in most schools, it too is based primarily on direct memory. So who was the third king of Spain? And you get 4 choices and you pick one and hope it's the right one. Or what were the dates of the French Revolution? And that kind of learning, students learn pretty quickly that the reason they're learning those things is so that they'll pass tests. And the reason they pass tests is to move through school and get out of school as soon as they can so that they can go back to the real world, in which what they learn in school plays a very minor role. And we need to reverse that, because we know, for example, that instead of learning the dates of the French Revolution, it's important to think about the French Revolution and think about what the causes of the French Revolution were, why the French Revolution occurred the way it was, why it was such a bloody revolution. And to understand that is deeper and richer and prepares us when there are other revolutions in the world to really think about what's really happening there and not just learn something that's superficial.
So, how can we take all this into practice at our classroom? How could teachers implement this into their classrooms with their students?
Well, actually there are a cluster of questions. For the individual teacher, the question is, how can I help students develop, good thinking, skillful thinking through what I do in the classroom? And how can I help those students use skillful thinking to think about important content so that they really, understand it, can explain what's happening, can identify other examples and respond to them, etc. Those are the basic questions that a teacher faces. But there's a bigger question, and that is, how can teachers in a school, starting with 2 or 3-year-old kids and ending with 18-year-old children, teach skillful thinking and teach students to think skillfully about content in a coordinated way, so that the end product is that students learn how to do those things, and they do them themselves automatically, and they do them well when it's needed without having to rely on a teacher. I mean, the analogy for me is learning to speak a language. At the beginning, you know, we teach students about words and about grammar, okay, and we want them to get the structure right, and they practice it and they learn it, and pretty soon we don't have to tell them anymore. They know and they speak well and they communicate well, and they do that without having to say, what rule of grammar do I have to use here? Okay. Or a good athlete, you know, starting, he's not so good, but he practices and learns to do it well, and then does it well on his own in the middle of a football game. That's a wonderful thing. And that's what we want to happen with students in a school, that teaching thinking be an explicit and organized part of the teaching of every teacher in a coordinated way, so that students, you know, learn how to do it and it becomes second nature to them, and they can identify when they need to stop and solve a problem, and they know how to do it and they do it. Right? That's the question. And it's an interesting question. You know, we have, you know, in our organization, we've really tried to meet that challenge, and we have developed some techniques for helping all schools become thinking-based schools. But there's much, much more that needs to be done. And we really want to encourage everybody to try to help schools to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now moving to the inclusion and comparative field, you know, actually everybody talks about teaching by using inclusive and comparative methodologies. Is TBL connecting with these ideas and needs and works in favor of the real inclusion of every student in the classroom?
Well, yes, and of course I do. In fact, part of TBL is an emphasis on what I call social thinking. And that contrasts with what a lot of schools, you know, force students into, which is individual thinking, learning, in competition with other students. That's not the way the world works, really. The world works by people connecting up with other people, working together, suggesting ideas. You change your mind, you listen to other people, you try to make sure that what they're saying is correct, you act on it, okay, they listen to you. And from my point of view, the idea of inclusion, okay, well, that was not a big thing in the United States or in Spain a number of years ago. And, you know, both countries used to separate out students with special needs and keep them apart from the other students and treat them as, you know, having unable to learn, really. And to me, that's a big mistake. They did the same thing with gifted students. They pull them out and they think, well, they're super smart, okay, and they can learn faster and quicker than others, and they don't need other people to help them. Well, that's all wrong. Okay, in TBL, the central activity in TBL is students working in groups, in collaborative groups. I call them collaborative thinking and learning groups, in which they treat each other as equals, even though some students can do things that others can't. Doesn't matter, that's the way things are in the world. And we still treat others as equals, we respect them, we help them, they contribute to the group work. That's the right model. And it seems to me now that the idea of inclusion in a whole classroom, that's what we're looking at in these small groups. I mean, what I found is that you have students work together in small groups, oh, they come to love each other, they work together, they help each other, no matter who they are or what they can do and can't do. And to make that happen in a whole classroom, okay, that's a wonderful thing, and that's what our objective ought to be. And, you know, I mean, I have the same kind of rationale for that, because we're all people, and we all live in the world, and we all interact when we're not in school, and we have different abilities and different amounts of knowledge, okay, and when it works, okay, we're equals, we're friends, we share, we contribute, and we grow together. And to me, TBL needs to be the core of the activity that happens when students learn to work together that way.
Ya, la última pregunta.
Okay, last question.
Bueno, en ocasiones
Sometimes we heard about some teachers working on thinking skills outside the classroom as a separate work and not linking with the ordinary curriculum. This is something that also happens with those kids with special learning needs, that we used to take them out of the classroom to work with them separate from the rest. Why do you advocate to work thinking skills into the classroom and associate with the content of the ordinary lessons, what you call infusion?
Okay, actually there are two levels at which I can answer that. Okay, and one is, you know, I'm very positive about that. But the second level, I'm not so positive about it. Because what we have found that the kinds of thinking that we try to help students to learn to do well, and that we want them to learn to use in connection with the curriculum, okay, is the reason we focus on that is because most of the time there's a set given curriculum in a school, and our feeling is, well, we have to accept that. We can't argue that you need to put this new thing, TBL, in, and you need to throw out the old curriculum and put in this new curriculum. Okay, now that's sort of a concession, and the hope is that that old curriculum is going to wither and go away, and we'll have a new curriculum that focuses more on the real world, on the use of what students are supposed to learn in the real world, and solving problems and making decisions and making their way through the world. And mathematics is a good example of that, because, you know, over years and years and years, mathematics teachers have learned how to teach mathematics as a very abstract subject. And, you know, students memorize a lot of the mathematical formulas, they don't really understand them, etc. And they go away, they may get good grades, but they leave school really not understanding mathematics as it should be. Mathematics as it should be is a tool for helping us with issues that we have to deal with in our lives and in the real world. And of course a lot of people describe that as applied mathematics. And from my point of view, applied learning through problems that people have that they have to solve, okay, where you have to understand some of the deep intricacies of these problems, then you go to more abstract ideas, but you apply them and you understand them better. That's the real kind of curriculum that we feel there ought to be in every school. But you know, I mean, if a school wants to learn, if teachers want to learn how to teach their students to think better, and they have an old style curriculum, we're not going to say, no, we're not going to help you learn how to teach your students to think better. We'll help you learn that, and learn how to help your students to think about the curriculum you have. But if you think there should be a better curriculum, you need to contact the people who have the power to make a curriculum and advocate for change. There are some schools that I know of that actually they have adopted programs that bypass a regular curriculum and that have students working on real life problems. And as they go through all of these, they manage to get every single bit of a standard, more abstract curriculum into the student learning. And to me, that's a wonderful thing. But I think we're quite a distance from that. It's enough to convince people you've got to teach students to think better. Okay, change your whole curriculum, well, we'll do that next week.
So interesting all you say, Robert. We encourage all of you to go further and learn about TBL. You can find more information at their website, and of course we will share all at our website, all relevant information we can find about this methodology. It's really valuable to make the effort to infusion the teaching of thinking skills together with the teaching of the curriculum. Developing thinking skills for every student, low and high capacity, all working together and making their thinking better.
Hey, thank you.
Sure, that's...
Now wait, because I want to add something, and you can put it in or not. I want to just focus on, an example or two, because the presence of the two of you in our Summer Institute has actually made me focus as a major topic the issue of inclusion, okay, which I believe is what all schools ought to practice, whether it's a law or not, okay? And, it's made me think about the way a curriculum affects a student who has disabilities and the way we need to approach thinking in connection with those disabilities. And for the first question, how a curriculum affects students. Well, for example, you spoke about blind students. And I thought a little about blind students, but in thinking about blind students, to try to put yourself in their position, the way they perceive the world, the way they connect with the world, is not through visual appearances. It's through touch and sound, okay, etc. And so that becomes important in a curriculum, the parts of a curriculum that engage students in learning that way. That becomes tremendously important. And if there's no emphasis on that in a curriculum, we need to put it there. We need to translate learning for students in those terms. And they can learn as much as anybody else that way, if that is their disability. At the same time, put thinking in there, and the thinking will help them in the way it helps everybody else. And thinking, as I've said in the Summer Institute, thinking is the activities you need to engage in to be a good thinker is not physical activities. They're mental activities. And as mental activities, they're going to be formulated in whatever way your mental world operates. And we can do that for blind kids, we can do that, for children who don't have a language, okay, et cetera, et cetera. And, so it seems to me that with special needs students of that sort, that we have an avenue that we need to explore related to the way they think, the way they conceptualize things. And we need to do that in a way that translates into the way other people conceptualize things. Then you have sharing, communication, understanding, and everything we want.
Sure, that's our aim, and we are trying every day to get to this goal. We must say that through students with different disabilities can benefit from thinking-based learning methodology. They can learn all together with the rest of the students, respecting their differences, adjusting some of the processes and levels, but at the end, every of them will improve their thinking skills and learn all together. And now, yes, thank you very much.